living simultaneously on earth and in heaven, in the material and in the spiritual world. Doesn't that mean a splitting of consciousness?
No, on the contrary, we are talking about an extension, refinement, and spiritualization not only of your consciousness, but of your whole worldview, and above all, of your possibilities. Only now you grasp the whole reality. In scientific language, we may say,
a new dimension opens up before you.
You can picture the higher world, heaven, the spiritual realm, arching over the material plane as a new fourth dimension, which is added to the old familiar three-dimensional sphere to which you have so far confined your existence.
I don't understand. What else is there in addition to the world I am living in?
Well, then let us look one by one at the various dimensions that make up our existence. First dimension. A woodlouse locked in a narrow tube lives in a one-dimensional world.
It can only move along a line, lengthwise, back and forth, nothing more.
Second dimension. A woodlouse dwelling in a cellar lives in a two-dimensional world.
It can move not only back and forth, but also to the left and to the right, in length and width. As soon as it hits the wall, however, its world comes to an end.
Third dimension. Man lives on Earth and in space in a three-dimensional world.
He can move forward and backward, to the right and to the left, up and down, in length, width and height, namely in space.
Nevertheless, he continues to be locked in, without being aware of it.
By what? What limit does he reach? The world in which today's man lives is confined by the visible, the material.
Our narrow imagination, developed and orientated to the material, bumps against this wall and simply cannot get beyond it. There is an invisible, non-material sphere of reality, but we are as yet unable to recognize it, and thus can neither appear nor act in it.
Man lives only a small part of his life.
Fourth dimension. For a hybrid spiritual being, consisting of a material and a non-material part of body and soul, another level of reality opens up. A new fourth dimension.
Your soul, as a spiritual being, cannot exist in a material, but only in a spiritual world. The fourth dimension of our existence is the subtle, the spiritual world, that begins behind the veil that separates the visible from the invisible sphere of reality.
If your whole being is to begin to live, You must learn to appear in this new four-dimensional world as well. We now understand better why Agni Yoga teaches that you are living in two worlds. We even take this concept one step further and state quite clearly,
in fact, there is not two separate worlds at all, but only one uniform world.
We do not separate life in the third dimension from life on the plane. Rather, the world of the height has always existed and is just not recognized, not entered, and not used by the woodlouse. Nobody would get the idea to say that man lives in three worlds because he exists in a three-dimensional universe. Rather, his life in space naturally includes that on the line and on the plane. There is only one uniform three-dimensional world.
The old man, as a material being, lives in a uniform three-dimensional world.
Accordingly, life in the new four-dimensional world as well is just an expansion of the consciousness, of the understanding of the world, a more complete realization of reality as a whole. The penetration into a new sphere of reality, which always existed and surrounds us constantly, but was unknown up to now, and therefore remained inaccessible.
Just as life in space is not separated from that on the plane, neither is the spiritual separated from the material world.
We note and thus revolutionize the old world view.
The new man, as a hybrid spiritual being, lives in one uniform four-dimensional world.
This one overall world is partly dense, partly subtle, and partly ethereal. Every single place, every room, every single living being, every particle of matter, and even every atom is a unity composed of this partly visible, partly invisible spirit matter.
We are living in a matter-spirit continuum.
There is no division of the worlds, just as there is no separation of the third dimension from the others. There is no separation of the fourth from the other dimensions either. Upwards, towards the higher worlds, more precisely on the higher levels of the one uniform overall world, the spirit matter becomes finer and finer, just as the air on Earth becomes thinner and thinner at higher altitudes.
The transitions between the worlds, between heaven and earth, are fluid.
There is only one overall world, with dense spirit matter below and fine spirit matter above. Just as there is only one Earth atmosphere, with dense air below and thin air above.
You should realize that earthly matter is very dense. On planets at a lower level than the Earth, the matter is very coarse, while on those higher than the Earth, the matter harmonizes with spirit. In that sense, the Earth is a turning point. There are imperfections on the higher planets, but the matter there does not have the same refractory nature. There, matter becomes inseparable from spirit, free of opposition. Just as you need an oxygen device to ascend to high altitudes with thin air, you need the fiery body to live in the fourth dimension, in the fiery world, in heaven, which is nevertheless still part of the one uniform overall world.
The fourth dimension exists even if you are as yet unable to perceive it. It is the world of thoughts, ideas, conceptions, ideals and dreams, of the images you form of yourself, of others and of the circumstances. The realm of thought creation, where your thoughts and feelings are reality. It is the plane of existence on which you reside in sleep and after death.
The realization that we are living on the physical plane in two worlds does not at all impede any of our mental work, notwithstanding the fact that the process of thinking is already at work on the subtle plane, because the mind belongs to the fourth dimension, or the realm of metaphysics. I don't quite understand this yet. Is there a very simple example of a thing belonging to the fourth dimension?
Well, we had already talked many times about the most obvious example. Every human being, every animal, every object, for example an antique, every place has its spiritual subtle aspect, which is called the aura. You can't see it, but it exists. Some feel it, some don't.
In scientific language, the aura is a reality of the fourth dimension, and you perceive it when you open your inner senses. The aura is the extension of a material thing into the fourth dimension, into the spiritual world.
It is inseparable from the objects of the material world and surrounds them on a level of reality that is invisible to us. Just as the fiery body is an extension of your physical body into the fourth dimension, so the spiritual, the fiery world, heaven, is an extension of the physical world into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is the inner plane. When we say the temple is in the heart, or the kingdom of God is within you, that means in scientific language, the soul lives on the inner plane, in the spiritual world, in the fourth dimension, in a sanctuary.
Psychic energy is called the organ of the fourth dimension. Indeed, this dimension itself is relative. It only expresses the refined state of all feelings. Great refinement bestows the possibility of understanding supermundane conditions. But if the fourth dimension has been established in the nomenclature, let it be thus. so long as we do not revert to two dimensions.